नमस्कार, आप सभी का आईएएस भारत में स्वागत है। हमारे फ्री क्रैश कोर्स को ज्वाइन करने के लिए गूगल फॉर्म को फिल करें जो कि नीचे डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स में दिया गया है। धन्यवाद।
So, welcome again in this class for enrichment of answers in internal security. Today we'll take the rest of the topics and we'll discuss the value additions, data and other things that we can use in our answers related to other topics which were left yesterday, so that we can write good quality answers in those topics as well. So, let us start. So, today we are going to discuss internal security's linkage between development and spread of extremism, primarily because of the extremist outfits that are operating from Pakistan occupied Kashmir or any other regions in the world that are affecting India, and also in the near past in our neighborhood in Bangladesh also, and the role of external state actors as well as the non-state actors. Primarily, these are the areas, these are the questions. The questions from these particular arenas have to be addressed using tons of examples. Examples shall be there at least with each and every point in case you want to fetch higher marks, because everybody has the same static content which we are reading. But if we have the data of the government agencies, we have the examples to quote, and we have the best case practices. For example, when it comes to the origin of terrorism from Pakistan occupied Kashmir, in handling that particular kind of terrorism, I got a suggestion of Lebanon model by Israel, how Israel handles terrorism that emanates from its neighborhood, primarily Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthi, the other three extremist organizations that are targeting Israel. So how we can handle that? We can learn from Israel's Lebanon model. So we can write it in the way ahead. So we have to collect such examples, best case practices, data, the reports by the government agencies, and various other things which will enrich our answers. So part A will be development and extremism, definition, meaning, UN framework, India specific analysis. Part B would be threats to India, Naxalism, left-wing extremism, which is in the last stage as per the recent reports by the Government of India or Ministry of Home Affairs. Terrorism, classification, causes, organizations, Northeast insurgency, Khalistan movement, Jammu and Kashmir insurgency, external actors, external state actors, non-state actors, information warfare and technology, which we talked about yesterday. And part D would be special themes, bioterrorism. It is also an emerging theme because last year there was a news that China is smuggling a fungus in USA which is going to destroy its agricultural sector. That comes under bioterrorism. And also COVID pandemic is also being talked about as a type of bioterrorism. So such kind of examples also, and question might come from specific themes, these emerging themes like BWC framework, narco terrorism, because we are in the midst of Golden Crescent and Golden Triangle, terrorist financing measures by India and also by the global bodies like UN, and the way forward. So part A would be development and spread of extremism. We will cover meaning, definitions, frameworks, and India and UN perspective so that we can quote it in our answers. So extremism, if we want a definition, if you do not have anything else to introduce our answer, at least we can have a standard definition so that we do not have to think in the exam, because पेपर में अगर आपके पास और कुछ नहीं है तो एटलीस्ट एक डेफिनेशन जरूर होनी चाहिए. अगर वो भी नहीं होगी तो इट इज गोइंग टू बिकम रियली डिफिकल्ट फॉर यू टू राइट अ गुड इंट्रोडक्शन. अगर आपके पास किसी कमिटी का, किसी रिपोर्ट का या फिर किसी एक्सपर्ट का एनालिसिस है टू राइट इन द इंट्रोडक्शन विच इज टू द पॉइंट रिलेटेड टू द क्वेश्चन, तो वो है तो ठीक है. वरना अगर वो नहीं है तो एटलीस्ट आपके पास एक स्टैंडर्ड डेफिनेशन हो, सो दैट आप क्विकली उसको इंट्रोड्यूस कर पाए अपने क्वेश्चन को. आपको बैठ के सोचना नहीं पड़े कि मैं इसको क्या लिखूं, और एक आपके पास एक स्टैंडर्ड डेफिनेशन होगी, एक होलिस्टिक डेफिनेशन होगी, तो इट गिव्स यू अ काइंड ऑफ अ फॉल बैक ऑप्शन. अगर आपके पास कुछ नहीं है, इट इज अ फॉल बैक ऑप्शन फॉर यू. So key dimension of extremism: political extremism, challenging state authority by force, the primarily the insurgent groups in Northeast, religious extremism, radical interpretation of the faith. Nuroids was an example of it. Ethno-nationalist extremism, ethnic or linguistic grievances driving conflict. Left-wing extremism and ultra-nationalism, xenophobia, related violence. So we have to cover these things into detail alongside examples. So development, how it leads to, I would say, extremism, and we will talk about development, extremism, nexus. So underdevelopment often creates conditions for insurgency and spread of extremist ideologies. People perceive that their needs are not being taken care of by the government. So primarily the Maoism as well as the insurgent groups in the northeast, their grievances are like that they say ki we are being discriminated upon, our needs are not catered to, we are suffering from terrible poverty. The state is a perpetrator in their eyes, so they find their liberation in the overthrowing of the state. So inclusive growth is the key pillar for sustaining Indian state as well as Indian democracy. तो अगर इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ नहीं होगी तो जो लेफ्ट आउट पोर्शंस होंगे उनमें जो ये रेडिकल आइडियोलॉजीज होंगी दे विल प्रोस्पर. दैट इज वाई वी आर एम्फेसाइजिंग ऑन इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ. हमारे 5 ईयर प्लान्स में भी ये चीज़ थी, और हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर एंड वेरियस मिनिस्टर्स, चीफ मिनिस्टर ऑल्सो एम्फेसाइज दैट वी शुड गो फॉर इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ. दैट इज द मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट रीज़न कि जो हमारी जो ये रिपोर्ट्स आती हैं, ऑक्सफैम इंडिया रिपोर्ट विच हाईलाइट कि मेजोरिटी ऑफ द वेल्थ है जो हमारी कंट्री की, इट इज़ बीइंग ओन्ड बाय द richest 10%. So such kind of report we have to quote so that we can substantiate our argument using those facts, reports, and indexes. So the root causes are poverty and unemployment, land alienation of tribals, social inclusion and marginalization, education and healthcare, feeling of injustice. These are the primarily the drivers of Maoism. You also may be knowing that under Samadhan doctrine, we have a comprehensive plan. We have a military angle to it, like surgical strikes, in order to cater the radical elements, but we are also going for rehabilitation. Even in Jammu and Kashmir, हमारा operation सद्भावना चलता है, in which we look for the welfare of the people to generate the goodwill among people. अगर पीपल के अमंग गुडविल नहीं है तो अथॉरिटी की अगर लेजिटिमेसी नहीं होगी तो पीपल आर गोइंग टू रिवोल्ट. So welfare is the prime motive. That is why these comprehensive doctrine have a welfare angle to them. And then perception factors are also there. At times the narratives are presented to these people as such that the state is the culprit. The state is your oppressor. The state discriminates against you. And these narrative wars are very much important in this sixth generation warfare world. So, perception of injustice versus actual poverty, misgovernance and corruption, inability of state to address grievances, alienation from mainstream and propaganda by extremist group. For example, the social media pages by the extremist organizations like ISIS, they talk about victimization of minorities in India, but they do not give any absolute facts which represents or which presents that minorities are actually suppressed. So kind of narrative wars or propaganda warfare, that is also Operation K of China is also related to. They fuel the Khalistani movement by presenting that the Indian government or the Indian state is anti-Sikh. So such kind of examples we can use in perception factors. And then comes the enabling environment. Certain environment develops which facilitates the revolt among the people, which leads to extremism. For example, the geographical remoteness, the prime reason of sustenance of insurgency in red corridor and in the northeast region, because terrain is the problem there. Development comes late in those areas because geographical terrain is not favorable. You cannot go for heavy industrialization in short run. You have to accommodate your industrial policies as per the geographical terrain. In fact, every policy like agricultural policy, export policy, or whatever policies are there, we have to accommodate those policies as per the geographical terrain. So, such kind of factors impact the rise of extremism in these areas. Then the weak state presence. In Hindi heartland, the presence of central government is felt. But when it comes to the little bit far away states, for example, the northeast regions, they are primarily away from the central government geographically. So that is why at times it is being criticized that Northeast for a long period of time was deprived of the attention of the central government. There was a lack of focus of central government in the development of the Northeast region. That is why in recent times the focus of central government on development of the Northeast region has increased multifolds. We are constructing big bridges there. We are making railway tracks and other means of communication as well as transportation. And also through the international channels like Kaladan project is there. We are increasing the connectivity. We are trying to bring prosperity in that particular region so that people do not feel that they are being discriminated against. So such kind of examples we have to quote in our answers so that we can beautify them. Then external funding and support, that is by China. Then ideological vacuum filled by the extremist. When once people are unhappy, you can sell any narrative to them. That is where the Maoism has prospered in Red Corridor. Then the social media radicalization, primarily the pages by various extremist organizations like ISIS, and the use of various apps like Telegrams. There they run echo chambers where they add new people and give them the extremist content to consume, which ultimately leads to radicalization. So ISIS groups, here we can use the example of Karnataka and Kerala. So such kind of examples we can quote. So part B would be internal security threats to India, that is Naxalism, which is taking its last breaths in India. Terrorism. We had a we had a question on this particular topic last year in 2025 mains. Northeast insurgency. There was a question on this particular topic as well in last year's mains. Khalistan and JNK. So this particular topic has not been asked. So it is highly probable that question might be asked from this particular topic this year. So four major internal security challenges are there. Other challenges are also there, but these are the four that we will talk about. First is the left-wing extremism, that is Maoist insurgency since 1967. That is the Naxalbari incident. The Red Corridor has now shrunken to 8 states. Do prepare a map of it, and so that if in case the question is asked from this particular portion, you should be able to draw the map and Red Corridor very quickly within seconds. Then it is rooted in socio-economic inequality that we already talked about. Then the significant decline post 2015 national plan of action for catering to Naxalism, primarily the Samadhan doctrine. Then we have the Northeast insurgency. There are 30 plus armed groups historically, but most of them have surrendered. They have entered into a peace treaty with the central government, Naga Peace Accord, Brew Peace Accord, and various other peace accords are there. So we have to use these accords in order to beautify our answers. We have to use them as examples. Then ethnic, tribal, and secessionist demands were there, and several peace accords have been signed that we have already talked about. A significant reduction of violence in these particular regions have been witnessed in these particular regions as per a report by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Last year I covered that particular report in detail and I collected data from there. So you should collect data from there to present the actual picture. If in case a question is being asked from Northeast insurgency, you can use that particular report and highlight the new data so that you can make the examiner clear that I have studied the current status and I have covered this particular portion thoroughly, and you can get an advantage over others. So terrorism and J&K insurgency. So that particular insurgency is also dying down. There are very least incidents of. In fact, there has been no incident of stone belting in Jammu and Kashmir in the recent years, and also barring a certain two to three unfortunate incidents or terrorist attacks like Pahalgam by Pakistan based outfits, the state has been peaceful after the revocation of Article 370. So we have to talk alongside facts. How much of investments have come into Jammu and Kashmir? What was the size of the Jammu Kashmir budget? What are the number of tourists that are visiting Kashmir? I think in recent years it has been a breakthrough. We are seeing many tourists are visiting Jammu and Kashmir in recent times, and various other things are happening, and various corporates are investing in Jammu and Kashmir also. So Pakistan sponsored cross-border terrorism is there. ISI and non-state actor nexus is there. ISI provides them ideological, moral, and financial support, and also provides them with logistical support. At times, it is also being highlighted by various intelligence agencies that ISI has a presence in Nepal also and in Bangladesh also. And they are pushing radical outfit and terror outfits from there as well. So, we are facing a challenge from the both frontiers. We are facing, I would say, a sixth generation warfare from both sides. So, we have to use these examples in our answers that Pakistan's ISI is fueling or funding terror outfits across the borders of India. Then we have 2611, Uri, Pulwama, and Pahalgam attacks. We have to use them as examples. Post Article 370 revocation, the state has stabilized to a great extent. We have to cover this particular portion with suitable data. Then the Khalistani separatism, we have to talk about Punjab militancy in 1980s and 1990s, primarily because we have some kind of radicalization in that particular state, and then those military operations happened in order to flush out the radical extremists from that particular state. Then overseas revival by the diaspora elements, primarily the issue of Gurpatwant Pannu. Then ISI Khalistan nexus documented. It is has been documented, and there has been evidence by the intelligence agencies that ISI is supporting the Khalistan insurgency in India. And then India's strong diplomatic response that we are giving so that these Khalistani elements do not prosper in the foreign soil, primarily the hubs like in Canada, like in UK. So we are increasing our diplomatic response so that these foreign countries do not become a hub of Khalistani separatists. Then we should cover Naxalism in a little bit in detail. Left-wing extremism, the Red Corridor challenge. Origin was in Naxalbari in 1967. Then Red Corridor and Naxal Mukt Bharat Vision in 2026. So we have to mention this particular vision either in the introduction or in the body or in conclusion, but do mention it. So this is the whole timeline in 1967 Naxalbari timeline. Naxalbari uprising was held in 1969. CPI ML was formed. Then in 1980 CPI Maoist was formed. In 2004 there was a merger, and the Naxal movement got some kind of mileage by the formation of CPI Maoist. They came under a single party. Then in 2010, the violence was at its peak. There were many casualties of civilians as well as of the armed forces. Then in 2015, we had the National Policy and Action Plan that was a multi-pronged strategy that was not solely focused on military measures but also various developmental measures as well. Then violence was down in 2024 by 81% to 374 incidents only and 150 deaths. So we have to write this particular thing in comparison so that we can bring it to the notice of the examiner that look, I have covered this particular arena and I am substantiating my argument with facts that violence has really died down. Then we have given the vision of Naxal Mukt Bharat by 2026. Then Naxalism, violence, data, and district reduction. Then in 2024, the casualties are just 374 incidents and 150 deaths. So it has died down in last 10 to 15 years. And then we have the most affected areas was only 6 and district of concern as 6. So we have done really good work in countering Naxalism. So we have to use this data and facts in our answers. Then this is another data: 81% reduction in incidents, 85 reduction in death. Affected districts have been brought down to 38. I think it has also further gone down to 8 districts that we talked about in earlier slide, and 8,000 plus Naxalites abandoned violence because of the surrender policy of the Indian government. There in that particular surrender policy, we go for rehabilitation, skill development, and financial help of such people who quit violence and join the mainstream. It is a kind of rehabilitative measure in order to bring these people in the mainstream. So we have to use this data in order to substantiate our arguments in our answers. Then the National Policy and Action Plan 2015 Zero Tolerance Approach. Do mention this particular keyword also, that we are following a zero tolerance approach. We will not tolerate terrorism at any cost. Even if you want to talk to the government, you have to shed violence. So we have taken various measures that can be categorized into security measures, development measures, and community engagement. Security measures include CAPFs, India Reserve Battalions, counter-insurgency training, fortified police stations, new security camps, NIA and ED, financial choking of Naxalites, primarily the funding that Naxals get from the foreign elements like China. So we are focusing on choking the funding of these Naxalites, and we have formed 15 joint task forces so that we can cater to the security challenges posed by Naxalites. Then one of the most important pillar is development measures. Do mention it. At times, aspirants miss this particular angle and they overemphasize on security measures. These particular measures demand equal emphasis in your answer, so do mention them. Special central assistance we are giving, security related expenditure we are giving, our focus on road construction has increased. We are constructing mobile towers, bank branches, eklavya model residential schools are being promoted in such areas, and ITIs and skill development centers are being promoted in this area. So try to remember the data and try to quote it in your answer so that you can write a beautiful answer and you can differentiate it from your competitors. Then we have the community engagement that is very much needed in case you want the people to surrender and join the mainstream. Then the civic action program, tribal youth exchange programs, village defense committees, these are also formed in recently in Jammu and Kashmir, primarily after I think there was a terrorist attack in a border area of Jammu and Kashmir. After that, the village defense committees were constructed in them. So you can cover that particular current affair as well. And surrendered Naxalite rehabilitation, 3C strategy: road, mobile, financial connectivity, that is road connectivity, mobile connectivity, and financial connectivity. We are emphasizing on this particular connectivity. Then the Dharti Abba Janjatiya Gram Utkarsh Abhiyan, it was launched recently. So do mention this particular scheme by the central government, which was initiated recently in order to cater to the demands of the tribals. Then we are also recruiting tribal youths in security forces, like in Bastaria battalion. There, the recruitment of locals is being promoted so that we can handle the Naxalites in those areas in a better way. Then we'll cover Terrorism: causes, consequences, classification, organizations, finances, and measures taken by India and the UN. Terrorism, if we do not have any standard definition, or if we do not have any good content to introduce, any recent report or index, for example, we can use Global Terrorism Index in order to introduce our answer. By Institute of Economy and Peace, I think it is being published by a think tank of Australia. So we can use that particular index here in this particular arena to introduce our answer. So you can cover such reports and indexes so that we can cover it, or we can introduce the question related to this particular area in a beautiful way and to captivate the examiner. There is multiple types of terrorism, that is religious tourism by these outfits like ISIS, Al Qaeda, ethno nationalist like Litte, Ulfa, NSCN, which go for secession from the country. Then the left wing ideological Naxalites, Red Brigades. Then we have the right wing neo Nazis, white supremacists, that is primarily in countries like USA and in European countries. Then there is state sponsored terrorism by Pakistani ISI state proxy groups. For example, Iran's axis of resistance, that is Hezbollah, Houthi, and one particular other terrorist group is also there. So they call it as axis of resistance. So that is nothing but say sponsor terrorism. Then we have the cyber terrorism, that is critical infrastructure attacks and data theft, primarily by China on Indian infrastructure. Then it's bio or chemical terrorism, anthrax letters, sarin attacks, and I also talked about a fungus that has been used by China to decapacitate the agriculture sector of USA. Then is the narco terrorism that we face due to Golden Crescent and Golden Triangle. So we have to categorize terrorism in case question is asked into these categories. If we have the categories, it becomes really easy to generate points. Otherwise, after 3 to 4 points, it becomes really difficult. सांस भी आना बंद हो जाता है कि क्या लिखूं और क्या लिखूं. If we start thinking into frameworks, अगर हमारे पास ये फ्रेमवर्क होंगे ना, तो हमारे लिए पॉइंट जनरेट करना इट बिकम्स मच इजियर. सो ऐसी ऐसी चीज़ों का वी हैव टू keep in mind that we have to generate frameworks which will help us in generating points. So ऐसे ऐसे frameworks we have to keep in mind. Then the terrorism causes are there: political causes, political exclusion, authoritarianism, lack of democracy is there. Then economic, poverty, unemployment, social are there, ideological, external, psychological, technological. So we have to think across these categories. These are nothing but frameworks which you can use to generate more and more points. Then there are consequences, human casualties are there, economic casualty, social, political, security, international, and long term. So we can generate points using same frameworks here also and here also in most of the points. So at least we have to remind or keep in mind these frameworks. Once we are having these frameworks in mind, it becomes really, really, really easy to generate points. Then key terrorist organizations that are there: Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Mujahideen, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Tariq-e-Taliban Pakistan, Ulfa, Six for Justice. So we can use these examples in our answers. So do keep these examples in mind and try to quote the examples and each and every point, because that is going to create the differentiating factor in your answers. Otherwise it becomes really difficult to answer questions or write better answers from your competitors. So you have to lace your answers with these examples so that you can beautify your answer. Then comes the terrorist financing channels and countermeasures. Finance is said to be the blood of this criminal activities. So if we choke the finances, we are going to choke these particular criminal activities and these outfits, these terrorist outfits. So we have to See how terrorism has been funded. That is state sponsorship. Everybody knows Pakistan sponsors terrorist organizations, drug trafficking, narco terrorism, because everything is interlinked. One criminal activity is linked to other. Terrorism is linked to organized crime. Crime is linked to terrorism, and terrorism is linked to narco terrorism, and narco terrorism is linked to terrorism. So this is a vicious cycle. So we have to break it, and we have to counter each and every one of them. And the most important is the finance. So this is a vicious kind of cycle. So Hawala networks are also there, charity and NGO friends. That is why the government has come up with various regulations in order to regulate the non-government organizations. Then the cryptocurrency, it is the one of the most important funding measures. Do mention it. If the question comes on terror funding, I think you should write the first point as cryptocurrency. Do mention the decorated points, the most important points at the first place, first, second, or third point, and keep the general points in the last, because they are going to impress the examiner greatly. If you are writing this particular point in the last, you are reducing your impact on the examiner. So do write decorated points with which you have examples, some real life examples in the first instance itself. Then extortion and kidnapping, that is organized crime. Then counterfeit currency, fake Indian currency notes, and then the funding from the outside, primarily by Khalistani outfits. Then India's counter financing measures, we have various measures like NIA, like Enforcement Directorate. FATF compliance is there. Pakistan on FATF's grey list, that was there for this period of time. Financial Intelligence Unit. Then we are seizing Naxalite funds under PMLA cases. Then Operation Sindoor destroyed the terror infrastructure. In the Operation Sindoor, we did not target the civilian infrastructure. We just went after the terror outfits. In Balakot strikes as well, we did not attack the civilians. We attacked the terror outfits and their hideouts. And then international cooperation through UNODC and SCO's REDS framework. So we have taken these much measures in order to counter terrorism and its funding. Then contemporary examples across domains. We have to mention these contemporary examples so that we can fetch 1 mark extra from our competitors. For example, 26/11 terror attack, Pulwama, Pathankot and Uri attack, Bureau 121, Apt 42 and Muddy Water. These are North Korea or Iran linked groups, espionage, sabotage, and credential theft with deniability. So such kind of attacks are there. Team George, that was an election interference, that was an attack on Indian democracy. Then is crime, terror nexus, FICN and Hawala network, fake Indian currency notes, and informal transfers to weaken the Indian economy. Then the drones and new tech. I talked about it yesterday also, that drones are used for smuggling, for terror attacks, for smuggling fake Indian currency notes, for drug smuggling, for narco terrorism. So do mention these UAVs or drones in most of your answer wherever it is possible. Then the international architecture, the UN global counterterrorism strategy is there, address conditions conducive to terrorism, prevent and combat terrorism, build state capacity and strengthen the UN's role, ensure human rights and rule of law. That was the UN global counterterrorism strategy. And also there was a summit on New Delhi in recent years, out of which the New Delhi declaration came out. I think there was a meeting of UN Counter-Terrorism Committee of UNSC in New Delhi, out of which the New Delhi Declaration came, and you can quote that particular declaration in your answers. Then UNSC sanction regimes by UN 1267 committee. FATF standards are there. Bilateral and plurilateral. I think MOUs are being signed by the countries, for example, between India and Israel. Then the conventions and capacities, we have various international conventions that aim to combat terrorism in all of its forms. We can also mention the suggestion of India, the CCIT framework that we have proposed to UN, Comprehensive Convention to Counter Terrorism. But that has not been passed, but we can write it as a suggestion in way forward or in conclusion. That would be a good way to conclude. So we can use that as well. Then we have the way forward. Defeat the proxy model, raise the cost of deniability, expose and sanction sponsors diplomatically and at FATF, primarily directed at Pakistan. Then secure the new domains. Do not let the terrorists penetrate the new domains, for example, the digital world. Then there is a need of global convergence, that is UN Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism that I talked about earlier. Then the development as a security, go for inclusive growth so that nobody feels left out in the development process. Then Global Terrorism Index 2026, we can cover this particular index and we can use data from it in our answers in order to beautify it. There are the global number of global deaths, total attacks, how many countries improved. Pakistan is the one of the most impacted country due to terrorism. Then the top 10 countries, and then we can find the India specific figures in this particular report. So these are some of the other facts that we can use in our answers. Sub-Saharan Africa, that West India ranked safer, sustained CT operation counterterrorism of operations effective. Pakistan is at number one, highest score ever on global terrorism index. So we can use this data. For example, the proliferation of terrorism in the Khorasan region, in sub-Saharan region, how it is affecting Africa also, and how the terrorism in those regions is also dangerous for India, because in these times we are talking about the indivisible security that we have covered in earlier times. So that is why we can use the terms that are being used we in earlier times, in earlier session, in also these I would say these topics as well. So we have to use such key terms that our security is indivisible security. Operation Sindoor, we can cover this particular operation in little bit detail, so that if question is asked we can quote its example specifically. Because कई बार कैसा होता है कि क्वेश्चन की फ्रेमिंग विंडो, एग्जामिनर क्वेश्चन ऐसा फ्रेम करता है कि आपको एग्जाम्पल राइट करना इट बिकम्स काइंड ऑफ डिफिकल्ट. सो हमको अपना एग्जाम्पल है और अपना पॉइंट है वो मोल्ड करना पड़ता है थोड़ा सा. So that is why we can cover this particular operation, because it was a major breakthrough in India's counter terrorism strategy. इसके बाद हमने अपनी जो counter terrorism strategy है वो भी बदल दी थी. And PM Modi gave it. Do cover that particular counter terrorism strategy where we have given the clarity. So उस strategy के 3-4 pillars हैं. Do remember them by heart. Then the trigger attack was Pahalgam attack. Lashkar-e-Taiba took the responsibility. Tourist killing was there. India suspended the Indus Water Treaty. It was a major breakthrough, because हमने 3-4 लड़ाइयाँ लड़ी हैं पाकिस्तान के साथ, but this particular treaty was never suspended. It was the most credible card, in the language of President Trump, that we played against Pakistan, that we suspended Indus Water Treaty. Expulsion of Pakistani diplomats was also a result of the Operation Sindoor or Pahalgam attack. Then operation that we everybody knows what was the operation. We covered it in significant detail when it was happening. Then what was the significance? India shifted to proactive deterrence. Our approach is no longer reactive. We are going for proactive deterrence so that we can deter the terrorism emanating from Pakistani occupied Kashmir. Calibrated coercion. We are not going for mad killings. We are not going after civilians. We are just going after the terror groups. Atmanirbhar Bharat, we are designing our indigenous weapons, and we have tested our weapons in Operation Sindoor as well. Then the China Pakistan nexus two front scenario that came in open when we were doing the Operation Sindoor. China actively supported Pakistan with weapons and with ideological support and also support in the international organizations. Then from symbolism to strategy, it is no longer mere a symbolism. Now we are really serious that we do not want any terror attack either from the neighborhood or from anything else, and we are not going to tolerate it anyhow. So we are taking a proactive approach, and also the new terror countering policy by the Indian government given by Prime Minister Modi. Then counter-terrorism measures. India specific measures was there. We have created NIA in 2008, UAPA in 1967, NSG we have created, MACOCA, Maharashtra Control of Organized Crimes Act, that was primarily passed to cater to the D company problem, the organized crime that we were facing in Bombay. Operation Sindoor, SARC Regional Convention on Terrorism, Multi-Agency Center, Coastal Security Framework post 2611, India Israel and India US counterterrorism cooperation is also there, and also we have REDS organization in SCO, regional anti-terrorism strategy in SCO. Then UN measures are there, UN resolutions passed in the UNSC resolution 1267, Al Qaeda sanctions committee. It sanctions the infamous terrorists. UNGA resolutions have been passed. UNODC has been passed. Anti-money laundering, drug crimes nexus, FATF has been passed. India has pushed CCIT's Security Council 1988 1267. Taliban sanctions have been imposed. SCO's RATS, anti-terrorism structure. So we have to quote such examples. You may not recall each and every one of it, but if we are quoting 2 to 3 examples from international arena also, it really is going to add value to your answer. You can remember 4 to 5 from there, 2 to 3 from there. You are writing 7 to 8 points. That is more than enough. But do write suggestions or measures taken from across the domain, domestic as well as external as well, because on world stage in international forums as well we are pushing for anti-terrorism stances that we need to take. Then we will talk about the northeast insurgency. There we have the ethnic, secessionist, tribal demands, and peace accords. We will talk about that. And when will Northeast be insurgency free? I already told you that there is a report by Ministry of Home Affairs on insurgency in the northeastern region. Do cover it and do take out the data from there. Then in northeast insurgency groups history and status, we have the key groups. We may not remember each and every one of them, but at least try to remember the most infamous, like Ulfa is there, like NSCN Isaac Muiva of Nagaland is there, MNF is there. So such kind of infamous insurgent groups we should try to remember so that we can quote them in our answers. Then these are their demands, because their demands are also varied. Some want independent status, some want sixth schedule status, some want secession. So these are kind of frameworks that you can use to generate more points. For example, they want greater Nagalim, so you do quote Nagalim's example when it comes to the question related to asked, if it is asked to northeast insurgency. So such kind of examples shall be there in your answer. So these are the peace processes. Mizo Accord has been signed. Bodo Peace Accord in 2020. Tripura significant process has been witnessed, and violence is done down by more than 90%. Then we have the no fixed timeline depends on political settlement. We are going for political negotiations along with these insurgent groups, while adding while adding the state governments and making them an active partner in those peace processes. Then we have the NSCN Isaac Muya hardest to resolve Nagalim demand. It is the most intense demand that we are facing, but we are negotiating so that we can bring these insurgents into mainstream and we can end this particular NSCN Isaac Muiwa faction as well. Manipur conflict is ongoing. Recent violence has also been witnessed in this particular region because of the complex demography of that particular region. So the violence is also ongoing in this particular region. Our target is peaceful northeast through development and dialogue. One keyword that you can use in northeast, that is Asht Lakshmi. Do try to remember this particular keyword, that this particular key term Ashtalakshmi, the eight state, that these are the economic powerhouse and we need to tap the economic wealth, the economic capacities in these states. So you can use this particular keyword in your conclusions. Then we will move to Khalistani movement. Earlier phase in 1980s, current overseas revival and India's response to it domestically as well as in the international arena. Then comes the Khalistani movement, earlier phase versus present. Earlier phase, the person responsible for it was Jarnail Singh Bhindranwala, the ideological leader of this particular movement. Then it led to Operation Blue Star in 1984. Then it intensified after Indira Gandhi's assassination, and then the riots happened. Some terror outfits are there. Babbar Khalsa, KPLF, and Khalistan Commando Force are active. So we have to use such examples in our answers. In case the question is asked from Khalistan, then ISI Pakistan is actively supporting the Khalistani demand. So we have to mention this particular example in our points as well. So domestic factors are also there and foreign factors are also there. So we can categorize the region for the reasons for Khalistani movement in domestic as well as the international reasons for the Khalistani movement. There, from there, it will appear that our answer is more organized, more categorized. Then, Air India Kanishk bombing. It was a famous case in 1985. That is a pre 9/11 attack, and if we are mentioning this particular example because it is much talked upon, so we have to mention it. Then comes the Punjab militancy that was crushed in mid 1990s. Then the last major incident was the assassination of CM Beyant Singh in 1995. It was a major incident at that particular point of time. That Punjab, though, is now peaceful, but there was a spiritual leader and he also won the election to Lok Sabha as an MP, but currently he is under detention. So current revival is there. The Six for Justice, US based but banned in India. Khalistani Tiger Force, Ash Dalla in Canada. Amrit Pal was arrested in 2023, but he won the election with a huge mandate. So we can mention this particular thing in our answers so that we can show that people like him has a good support over the people in the state, that they even won the election. Then one of the most important event was Hardeep Singh Nijjar's was killing in Canada. That it also led to India Canada diplomatic crisis, and India's consulate in San Francisco also met with arson in July 2023, and there was also an incident in UK at that particular point of time. And also offensive posters like Kill India posters targeting our diplomats in 5 countries were also seen. Khalistani referendum do mention it across various countries like Canada, UK, US, and Australia, and we raised this particular issue diplomatically with these countries. And then ISI Khalistan nexus are there documented by the Indian agencies, by various intelligence agencies of India, primarily the RAW and IB. So use these examples in order to beautify your answer. And also mention the Operation K of China. in case the question comes on Khalistan. Then we talk about the Jammu Kashmir insurgency, cross border terrorism, Article 370, post 2019, transformation after the revocation of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir. Then we have to cover a brief background that in 1947, partition and Maharaja's instrument of accession to India. Then the Pakistani occupied one third of Jammu and Kashmir in 1947, which is still under their occupation, their illegal occupation, that is called as the Pakistani occupied Kashmir. Then in 1989, proxy war begins. ISI sponsored armed insurgency starts in Kashmir, primarily because of the downfall of USSR. Due, in, due to their activities in Afghanistan, the terror outfits in Afghanistan revoked USSR from there, and from there, the terrorist or insurgents got a moral boost that we have overthrown a big empire from Afghanistan. Now let us focus on Kashmir. And suddenly, the militancy and radicalism in Kashmir increased multifolds. Then we have the peak fatalities in of 4,000 in 2001 as per the SATP data, and Hizbul Mujahideen, LETG, Jaish-e-Mohammed were the major groups which led to this particular insurgency. So Article 370, which gave a special status and a dual constitution, was talked about as a major hindrance in the safety and stability of the Jammu and Kashmir. Then we revoked Article 370 in 2019 on August 5. And after that, Jammu and Kashmir was bifurcated into UTs of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. The end of special status and full constitutional integration of Jammu and Kashmir was ensured with our country, and Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act 2019 was passed. Then post 2019 transformation, we have to use this particular data that fatalities have come down to just 127 from 4,000. GDP growth projected at 11% in 2024 and 25. That is an impressive number. That is way more than the national average. Then tourism, 2.35 crores domestic tourists, only domestic tourists. 2024 elections, 58% voter turnout was seen. I think in Lok Sabha elections it is around 65 to 66%. So it is near the national average in Lok Sabha elections. So that was an impressive turnout. And world's highest railway bridge was constructed in Chenab River, and it has been completed, which shows our seriousness that we want to develop this particular region, which signals to people that government caters to their needs and to their welfare. Anti-corruption measures have been taken, land record digitization has been ensured, foreign investment inflow increased significantly, primarily by the ISAR group of Dubai. I think a mall was constructed or something was like that when I covered this particular issue when I was writing the mains. But there are still challenges are remaining. Pahalgam attack showed that the militancy has not died yet. And this particular attack was a highly calculated attack. It was an attack on the people, on the minorities, on the economic security of the state. At that particular point of time, Dr. S. Jaishankar made a statement that this particular attack is an attack on the economy of Jammu and Kashmir, because it is going to deter the tourist from visiting Jammu and Kashmir, which is going to affect the local economy. So such kind of attacks are happening, and it is unfortunate for us. Cross border infiltration still continues because of the unfenced border. Political alienation in various parts of valleys is still there, because the voter turnout in valley was less compared to the other regions, and we are facing the China Pakistan nexus, two front pressure, and also the nature of militancy has changed. Now the militancy has changed from border from Kashmir Valley to the Jammu region, because the terrorists are taking a strategy that we will attack the minorities, then the government or the armed forces are going to attack the terrorist. And when the minorities or when the armed forces are going to eradicate the terrorist, they will present it as that the government is persecuting the minorities, so it is a propaganda warfare kind of thing. So they are trying to initiate a vicious cycle. So we have to take a calculated risk and a calculated action so that we can respond to the emerging threats accordingly. Part C, role of external actors and non-state actors. There we have to cover the definition, Pakistan, China, non-state groups and hybrid threats that we are facing right now. External state actors, we have to be thorough with the definition that has been given to us, and also to the non-state actors. And non-state actors do not just cover the terrorist groups, it also covers the NGOs, it also covers the corporates, it also covers the terrorist organizations and various other groups that lead to, oh, I think we can say, which can affect the internal security. It is not just limited to terror groups. Kindly keep this in mind. It also include NGOs, cooperatives, which can work for accentuating terrorism in our country. So, type of external interference in India's internal security: military support, financial funding, sanctuary and refuge, propaganda and cyber warfare, diplomatic cover, and economic warfare. So, such kind of interference is there. The interference is just not through military means. They provide logistical, financial, and every kind of support to these terror outfits. Then, who are external state actors? That is the definition: sovereign governments and their official agencies, military, intelligence, diplomatic, that use the instruments of the state to undermine another state's or country's security. Then we have the hostile intelligence agencies like ISI, hybrid and gray zone tools, strategic objective, coercion without attribution, destabilize, distract, and deny. Then we have the contemporary state actors, that is Pakistan, then it's China, and state cyber units. For example, North Korea's example, which we talked about when they attacked the India's Kudankulam nuclear power project. Pakistan's state actor challenging India's internal security. India's internal security problems are a manifestation of internal weaknesses and external attempts at waging a proxy war. It is a part of Pakistan's state policy to bleed India through 1,000 cuts. Do mention this particular strategy of Pakistan in your answers. And also do mention one more thing, their Ghazwai Hind vision or Ghazwai Hind strategy. So do mention these keywords in your answers. They are going to add value to your answer, really going to beautify your answer through these kind of keywords or key strategies of the foreign countries. Then the ISI terror nexus is there. It provides funds, it provides sanctuary, it also prevents the designated global terrorists from getting persecuted. And then it also promotes the secessionist movements like the Khalistani movement or ISI Ulfa Nexus in Northeast. It also supports the secessionist movements or insurgent groups in the northeastern part of the country. Then they have the strategic tools like FICN, narco terrorism through Golden Crescent, diplomatic support to Kashmiri separatists. They blocked India at UNSC in counter-terrorism designation of famous terrorists. Then refugee crisis from POK, because the people in POK are highly, we can say they are highly stressful about the less development in Pakistan occupied Kashmir. They are given stepmotherly treatment and the projects of China like CPEC. We can use the example of CPEC as well, that through this particular project no prosperity was passed down to the people and they are just focusing on the prosperity of Punjab province of Pakistan. So we can use such examples. There is China Pakistan nexus, there CPC I was talking about. And then we have to talk about the recent actions that we have been taken. Pahalgam attack, then Pakistan denies involvement, Indus water treaty was suspended, Operation Sindoor was there, India presented dossier to UNSC in order to verify its claims, and international community condemns the attack committed against India on the Indian soil, on the minorities especially. Then the information warfare and emerging threats from external actors. One and the most important is the cyber attacks. These kind of cyber attacks, attacks on power grid, financial systems, state sponsored hacking of defense network. General Manoj Pandey called it as military tech under siege. So I think also in our armed forces, defense cyber agency has also been constituted and to cater to the cyber warfare against the armed forces. So use such examples. Then we have the disinformation and information warfare, fake narratives, social media manipulation, influence operations. Use this keyword. New India expression, information threats to security. Then we have the technology and arms, emerging technologies like AI, quantum technology, and hypersonic technology. Then we have the adversaries acquiring advanced military technology. China's dual use technology in border areas has been deployed so that they can use it for military means. Then India's response, that is Atmanirbhar Bharat defense. Then we have the drone warfare. Pakistani drones dropping arms in Jammu and Kashmir and Punjab. Heroin and weapons delivered through a drone in India. FARC in Colombia adopted drone warfare too. India's developing counter drone systems in order to cater to the drone warfare that has been in used by the Pakistan so that we can counter it effectively. Who are the non-state actors? I think we should use the definition if in case we do not have anything else beautiful to introduce our answer, so that we can use at least the definition. At least we have the fallback option so that we can move ahead in the answer and do not get stuck at the introduction itself. Then these are the terrorist organization that I was talking about, that non-state actors are not just about terror activities. These are the insurgents and separatists also. Cyber actors and mercenaries, diaspora and front bodies, radical and ideological networks, crime terror syndicates are also there. So these are the kind of non-state actors in which you can also include the NGOs, corporates. So we can also use cooperatives. So these are the non-state actors. Then India's security challenge. There we have the examples of various non-state actors and their category and their threat to India. Then the state which is backing them, and then the keynote, which are the major terrorist attack that they have committed against India. State versus non-state actors, it is the key difference that external state actors are the sovereign bodies, sovereign government official agencies. They have no sovereign status. They are bound by international laws and treaties. They operate outside legal frameworks. They are hard to pin down. Then they have the various funds, military and intelligence. They need sponsor funding, crime donations, and hawala. So their funding measures are different. They seek deniability, act covertly via proxies. For example, Iran acts through the axis of resistance, but they often they are overt in action. They own any particular terrorist attack. For example, Lashkar-e-Taiba owned Pahalgam attack, but they are dispersed. Their plausible deniability shields the state, but they diffuse cells and attribution is difficult. So Pakistan's ISI and state cyber bureaus are an example of external state actors. LETJM, ISIS, and cyber mercenaries are external non-state actors. So that is the primary difference between external state and non-state actors. Then we can use the contemporary examples across various domains: cross-border terrorism 2611, Fidain attacks. Do use this particular key term, Fidain. It refers to the suicidal bombings. So do use this particular keyword in your answers. That is Pulwama, Pathankot, and Uri. Then state cyber proxies, Bureau 121, F142, Muddy Water. Then drones and new tech, cross-border UAV drops. Crime, terror nexus, FIC and Hawala and networks, election interference, team Joe that we talked about yesterday also. India's multi-dimensional response is there. Legal regimes, where we have passed various acts. We have the institutions, NIA, multi-agency sector, center, and other also institutions are there. Border and coastal security we are taking seriously. CIBMS, UAVs, radars, ICPs. Then we have the doctrines, zero tolerance, or the recent doctrine which we have come upon in order to counter terrorism. Then we have the whole of government or whole of nation approach. Then we have the tech and cyber capabilities, AI, big data analytics, facial recognition monitoring, online radicalization. We are choking the finances of these terrorist organization through various mechanisms, domestic as well as international, which we talked about earlier. Then we have the specific themes, that is bioterrorism and narcoterrorism. Bioterrorism, we should have a definition: that deliberate release of biological agents like bacteria, virus, toxins to cause illness or death in people, animals, or agriculture with the intent to intimidate or coerce government or societies. Then we have the biological agents like anthrax, smallpox, plague, Om Shri Yanko Japan, Soviet bio preparate ricin. So these are the examples. If we can remember two to three of them, it becomes really easy to write an answer on this particular question if in case a question is asked. Then we have the India's preparedness, NCDC, we have a pandemic preparedness, we have BWC, Biological Weapons Convention. Do mention it in your answer in case bioterrorism question comes. It was adopted in 1972. 183 state parties are a member to it. It prohibits development, production, and stockpiling of bioweapons. No formal mechanisms, verification mechanism is there. That is its key weakness that we can highlight in our answer. And then India is a signatory and advocate of BWC's strengthening so that we can counter bioterrorism. Then we have the threat assessment. ISI linked groups may attempt biotax on India. Agricultural bioterrorism that I talked about, being a fungus being developed or used by China in order to deter or in order to threaten the agricultural sector of USA. Then climate change, leading to emerging pathogen risks, that is also a kind of bioterrorism. Then we have the narco-terrorism, the drug terror nexus, and India's challenge because of the golden crescent and golden triangle, in which you can prepare the report of, we can say, smuggling in India report by Directorate of Revenue Intelligence. I covered that particular report thoroughly last year, so that you can also cover it and take out the relevant data, examples, and various lines that you can quote in your answer, so that if any, in case the question comes, you can mention those facts there. And also do remember that you should add a diagram in case a question on narco-terrorism come or drugs smuggling comes, primarily the golden crescent and golden triangle. So India specific threat, golden crescent, golden triangle, everybody knows it. LET and GM financed by drug trafficking from Pakistan. Punjab heroin trafficking linked to terror networks. Drone drops from Pakistan. NDPS Act, Dawood Ibrahim, the D Company drug crime terror enterprise. Then NCB and NIA joint operations against narco terror networks. Then we have the global dimensions as well. The Taliban, largest opium producers, drug funds insurgency, because Taliban is a kind of non-state actors which has a control over a state. So which this particular source is the largest source of their income. Then we have the Al Shabaab. Then we have the FARC, Hezbollah, ISIS, OSCE framework, and UN Office on Drugs and Crimes Coordination. Do mention this particular convention. If in case you are not remembering any of the other convention, please mention this particular convention. Either you mention in the way forward or in the conclusion, but do try to mention it. Then we have the way forward: development, security nexus, address root cause, inclusive growth in LWE areas, national plan of action, that is in 2025 we should implement it in full swing. Then aspirational districts should be focused upon. Then institutions should be strengthened: NIA, ED, IB coordination, multi-agency center, community policy program should be run. Diplomatic offensive we should carry out, isolate Pakistan internationally, FATF. UN India led CCIT push at UN. We should push comprehensive convention against international terrorism in global bodies so that we can sign it and we can implement it. Then we should focus on technology and cyber defense, cyber command establishment, counter drone systems, social media monitoring for radicalization, and then international cooperation is also important. SCO's RATS framework we can use, SARC counter terrorism conventions we can use, intelligence sharing from allies, primarily the Five Eyes group can be done in order to cater to intelligence and preventive intelligence. And then Operation Sindhu doctrine, that is that is catering to proactive deterrence or the new policy of India against against terrorism. Then we come at the UN framework: prevention of violent extremism. Then UN International Day for Preventing Violent Extremism at 12 November. So we can use it as a value addition in our answers. So it focuses on dialogue and peace building, education and empowerment, good governance, human rights and development inclusion. So these are the core pillars. So these are the key UN principles UN in contained in the UNSC resolutions. So you may not be able to remember each and every one of them. If you are remembering one or two, that is sufficient so that you can quote them in your answers. I think remembering all of them is really a difficult job or a really a tough task. But at least try to remember one or two, which is convenient for you and which is the most important, so that you can add that particular thing in your answers. Then we have the India's alignment with UN. We are the co-sponsor of multiple UNSC counter-terrorism resolutions. India chairs UNSC Counter-Terrorism Committee in 2022. Then we have the SCO RATS mechanism for regional counter-terrorism. Then we have the India's MEA statement, zero tolerance towards terrorism, that has been given also during the Pahalgam attack. Then the Pahalgam attack cited in USC, Pakistan's role was clearly marked out. And then Operation Sindoor was India's decisive response. Then the key takeaways from the session from this particular PPT we can derive is: development deficit plus perception of justice is equal to breeding ground for extremism. So you can create such equations in your answer so that you can add value to your answer. India's multi-pronged strategy is working. LWE, NE, Jammu and Kashmir all showing significant improvement. We are seeing improvement in each and every problem that we are facing. External state actors, Pakistan remains the primary challenge. Operation Sindhu marks a new doctrine, the primarily the new counter-terrorism doctrine that we are talking about. Non-state actors, bioterrorism, narco-terrorism require international cooperation because these drug cartels or the bodies that are pushing drugs across the borders are interconnected and interlinked. Then we should focus on prevention, dialogue, good governance, and inclusive development are the ultimate solutions. So that was it about this particular slide. Now we'll talk about security challenges and their management in border areas. Border management is very much crucial, and it is an important topic so that we can so that we can ensure the internal security of India. So primarily when it comes to borders, I think most of the aspirant what मिस्टेक्स दे कमिट इज वो सिर्फ और सिर्फ लैंड बॉर्डर के बारे में लिखेंगे. दे डू नॉट टॉक अबाउट द मैरीन बॉर्डर्स और एयर फ्रंटियर्स. सो वेन एवर द क्वेश्चन कम्स, मैरीटाइम बॉर्डर का भी जिक्र करिए और एयर फ्रंटियर्स का भी जिक्र करिए. इट विल मेक योर आंसर मल्टी डायमेंशनल एंड कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव एज वेल. तो ये हमारे बॉर्डर की वो है. ये लैंड बॉर्डर हमारी इट्स अबाउट 15,000 किलोमीटर्स. कोस्ट लाइन हमारी इतनी बड़ी है दैट इज एक्सक्लूसिव इकोनॉमिक जोन ऑफ इंडिया. So we have to remember this particular data so that we can quote it in our answers. And it is relatively easy to remember as well as quote. Then why border management matters? This is the classical definition of border management which you can use in case you do not have anything else to introduce your answer. So sovereignty and territorial integrity, that is the core principle of a state. So it is one of the single most reason. Then counter cross border terror threats primarily from Pakistan. Then facilitate legitimate trade, that is import and exports. And then develop the borderlands, so roads, connectivity, vibrant villages program, border area development program. So such kind of programs we should be remembering. Then we have the India's land borders, that these are the data that 15,000 kilometers with 7 countries touching 17 states and UTs. So such kind of data we should be remembering. The length of the borders of major countries, for example Bangladesh, China and Pakistan. We may not remember the length of boundaries of these particular countries, but if you are trying to recall it, it is good. But at least try to remember the length of border of India with the major countries like Bangladesh, China and Pakistan, because majority of the security threats are coming from these particular countries only. Then seas, islands, and sovereign airspace. There we have the 7,516 kilometer coastal areas or coastline, which is our maritime border. Then we have the exclusive economic zone of 2.37 million kilometers square. Then we have 1,382 offshore islands, and then we have 13 coastal states and 9 union territories with maritime, I would say, maritime borders. Then there is sovereign airspace. A state exercises complete and exclusive sovereignty over the airspace above its territory and territorial waters. Air defense and an air defense identification zone. Do remember it. ADIZ. It is an important keyword to mention in case a question is asked on border security. Air defense identification zone. ADIZ guard it, while small drones now probe it daily for a weapon and narcotic drops. So air defense identification zone, that was a violation that was violated by Pakistan when the Pakistani drone infiltrated into India's airspace and dropped weapons or smuggled weapons into India or smuggled drugs into India. India's border guarding forces are there. One border, one force. Each frontier is guided by one armed force, and that was suggested by one particular committee in 1998, I guess, after the Kargil War. I'm not currently remembering the name of that particular committee, so you can search and you can use that particular committee into it. So these are the majority of the CAPFs that are catering to these borders. Assam Rifles, Indian Coast Guard or Navy, SSB, ITBP, BSF. It caters to Pakistan and Bangladesh. It caters to Indo-China border. It caters to Myanmar, Bhutan and Nepal's border. Assam Rifles also helps in maintenance of India's border with Myanmar as well as Bhutan. Then we have the ICG and Navy, which caters to maritime boundaries. Then we cover the major security challenges. So first is infiltration and terrorism is there, narcotics and smuggling is there, drone incursions are there, coastal and maritime threats are there. There you have to use the examples. demography and migration is there, illicit migration, for example, the Rohingya migration issue is there, disputed and undemarcated lines are there. So such kind of points we have to write along with a data or with an example. If we are going to add an example with single most point, it is going to really add value to our answers. So do try to have at least one example which each and every point, so that you can write them into your answers. The drone frontier and counter drone grid, which we covered in the last session as well, that this is the number of registered drones, certified remote pilots that we have approved, training organizations, counter US grid we have constituted. The threat is their arms and ammunition, surveillance, low radar cross section makes detection, identification and lawful interdiction difficult. So we have to cover the drone frontier thoroughly, and it may happen that question may be asked from drones, because these are in news for a long time and they can be asked in the examination. Then we have the hardening the border, which is the infrastructure, because our infrastructure at borders is not at par which is required. For example, China is building good infrastructure at its borders and India is lagging behind, so we need to cover up. So this is the number of funds that has been allocated to border infrastructure and management scheme, BIM scheme. Do mention it in your answers. A central sector scheme, it was a central sector scheme, building fences, roads, floodlights, border outposts, helipads, outposts, helipads and foot tracks with technology where physical fencing is not feasible. Then fencing and floodlighting, border roads and border outposts, comprehensive integrated border management scheme. The technological solutions, we are talking about mesh fencing across India Pakistan border to to stop the infiltration of the terrorist or radical elements. So such kind of examples we have to use. Then we are moving towards a smart border security grid. We are talking about the smart border. The next leap that was announced in June 2026 fuses technology, fencing, local administration into single leak-proof grid piloted at 7 to 8 locations before nationwide scale up. So this particular smart border concept is being talked upon to make India's border more smarter and for a more coordination between the armed forces, between the administration and between the technology. Then we have the quadrilateral security strategy. Border cannot be secured in isolation. A four-cornered model knits the local state into border fence, and that are first is border forces, second is technology, then is the local community, and then is the district administration. Do not overlook the importance of this particular factor, because in Kargil, when the Pakistani forces infiltrated into India's territory, the local population was the one which was to tell to the armed forces that the enemies have entered into our territories. So that is a good example which you can quote in your answers. And also we are preserving the vibrant villages or the border villages near the borders, so that we can keep a vigil on the border areas across the year. So do not overlook the importance of local communities in guarding India's borders. Then, what's new in these kind of areas? That is smart fence pilot, cutting edge sensors, drones we are using even in border management, and smart fencing, fencing modernization, soldier centric border outposts, and land port management systems to cargo and passenger clearance, secured smart trade gateways, so that our import and exports with our neighboring countries happen smoothly and the illegal trade or the informal economy can be curbed. Then the land ports and land port management system platform do cover it also, because we are focusing on land ports as well, so that our trade with the neighborhood can also increase and prosperity come in the border areas, primarily the border villages. The Land Port Authority of India runs 15 land ports across 5 international borders. The new land port management system launched on 9 June 2026 bring them to par with airports and seaports. So do prepare these land ports so that if in case the question is asked, you can write a good quality answer in that. So 15 land ports that we are talking about, 8 are with Bangladesh, 3 with Nepal, 2 with Pakistan, 1 with Bhutan, and 1 with Myanmar. So in case you can remember the breakup, it is really going to add value to your answer. At least you can remember the number of ports with 2 to 3 countries, for example, with Bangladesh, Nepal, and Pakistan. How land port management system is a smart border gateway. Here we have the unified digital platform, real-time exchange of logistics and regulatory data, which makes the functioning of these ports really smooth. And then there are end-to-end workflows. There are slot booking, payments, tracking, and single window clearances, so that trade happens undeterred. Then we have the integrated with IceGate ULIP unified logistics platform that came under the new logistics policy of 2022. And then we have the neutral and open platform linking government agencies and private operators. Then India's maritime doctrine in 2025. Marine borders are very much important, and question might come on maritime borders because a lot of developments are taking place for securing our maritime borders, be it strengthening of forces like India Coast Guard or Navy, or any other measures that has been taken to secure our maritime borders. It was released on 2nd December 2025. It was the Navy's first comprehensive doctrine in 16 years, though we came late, but at least finally we have it. Aim for a contested Indo-Pacific and the vision of Viksit Bharat 2047. So it is not just focused on security, it is also focused on tapping the blue economy. It is also focused on tapping minerals that are there on the ocean. It is also focused on fisheries and the other seafood industries. So it is a comprehensive doctrine. So do not confuse it with just military dimension. It has also an economic angle to it. Then we have the no war, no peace strategy. It formalizes the gray zone reality between peace and war, distrust, skirmishes, looming escalation, needing calibrated and ready responses primarily to cater to the threat of the Chinese ships in the Indian Ocean region. At times, Chinese ships dock into Indian Ocean region, threatening India's security, carrying out surveillance on the Indian borders or Indian maritime borders. Then we have the multi-domain operation, synchronized action across land, sea, air, and space, cyber, and cognitive domains to win decisive control. So it promotes interoperability with the other forces of Indian armed forces. Then it focuses on the new age technologies, AI, machine learning, unmanned and autonomous platforms for maritime domain awareness, predictive analysis. Please use this particular keyword in maritime border security, maritime domain awareness. Preferred security partners. For example, we have the vision of net security provider in the region, for example, to the smaller South Asian powers like Sri Lanka. Then we are the first responder in humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations. Then we promote jointness and integration with the other countries so that we can ensure a safe space in the Indian Ocean region. From Sagar to Mahasagar. Actually, last year itself, PM Modi gave this particular vision of converting Sagar into Mahasagar, I think in Mauritius. So, hardware is matched by maritime diplomacy, building partnership and capacity. So, India is the security partner of choice in the Indian Ocean region. In 2015, we launched the Sagar Doctrine, security and growth of all in the region. Then we have moved to Mahasagar Doctrine, mutual and holistic advancement of for security and growth across regions. Now we are not just limited to Indian Ocean region. We are going global and we are engaging partners across the globe. Then we have the Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue, the Navy's apex strategic outlook, that is the seventh successive edition. 30 countries we have engaged in maritime security, and one theme, that is holistic security and capacity building. So that was the outcome of the Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue on maritime security. And India's Indian Ocean Rule net security provider. We are first responder in humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, and we are steward of the blue economy and SLOCs. And also we can mention maritime punchil. Maritime punchil policy, blue economy vision. 2047 along with these particular doctrines. Then we have the way forward. A secure border is a precondition to Viksit Bharat 2047. I think one of the famous US president made a statement that a nation without borders is no nation at all. So we can use that particular quote in the beginning of an answer related to border infrastructure, which can really help us to impress the examiner. So we have to focus on various domains like tech enabled and not tech only. It should be enabled by technology, the sophisticated technology like AI and machine learning. Then we have to integrate the borderland with the borders. We need the help of local administration, vibrant villages, and we have to master the air and counter drone framework, because drone warfare is becoming one of the most important area of warfare, so that we can counter the emerging threats from our neighborhood. Then we have the whole of maritime security approach, because we have to increase the interoperability across various agencies, and we have to integrate technology into our maritime security as well, and we have to operationalize our maritime border security along with doctrines like Mahasagar doctrine, like maritime punchil doctrine. Then we have to promote diplomacy and cooperation with the other countries through using the international organizations like IORA, IONS. Then we have to ensure the coordinated governance of single window land ports, interagency fusion, and a quadrilateral grid for leak proof management. So we have to we have to increase the interoperability through coordinated governance. We need coord- cooperative federalism between the central and the state governments, and we have to engage the local bodies, and we also have to engage the armed forces. So border security is a holistic security. So we have to ensure the security of land borders, and we have to cover the emerging threats, and we have to cater to them as well. So threats are hybrid now. Infiltration, narcotics, FIC, and drones, gray zone activities at sea and below the threshold of open war. So we have to cater to these emerging threats, and the response should be layered. BIM scheme is there, CIBMS is there, smart borders, quadrilateral grid, land port management system, land ports is there, Mahasagar diplomacy is there. So we have to ensure a coordinated response and a proactive approach. The future is tech enabled, but it should be people centered as well. So integrating armed forces, technology, local administration, and partners for a leak proof strategy. And also we can mention 2 to 3 committees in this particular arena, like Madhukur Gupta committee, and one more committee is there, I'm not Madhav Godwale committee. So these two committees were formed in order to make some suggestions in order to strengthen India's border infrastructure. So we can use the name of those two committees and their recommendations as well, so that we can add value to our answers. So now we have internal security, security forces, and security agencies and their mandate. This particular arena is being leased from where the UPSC asks questions in the mains. But it may happen that question may be asked, because a lot of developments are taking place in the security forces and their mandates, so we have to cover them and we have to have certain value additions in case the question comes. So we have to cover them and we have to enrich our answers as well. So in part 1, various security forces and their mandates, and in part 2, various security agencies and their mandate, that are intelligence, investigation and coordination. Here we have the armed forces, CAPFs, and paramilitary. So we have the 7 CAPFs, Central Armed Police Forces, 3 plus 1 armed forces, that are 3 armed forces and 1 Coast Guard. 15 plus intelligence and investigative agencies are there in our country, and we have allotted 7.85 lakh crore rupees for in defense budget related to it. India's security architecture, who controls what? Two ministries anchor India's security apparatus, that is Defense Ministry and Ministry of Home. Defense Ministry handles external threats and the military, and Home Ministry handles internal security, borders and policing. Intelligence sits across both under the Cabinet Secretariat or the Office of Prime Minister, PMO. Then Ministry of Defense has these bodies under it. Then Ministry of Home Affairs have these bodies: CAPFs, Intelligence Bureau, NIA, NCB, and NetGrid, I4C, Border Management and State Police. Then Cabinet Secretariat has these intelligence agencies: RO, NTRO, National Security Council, NSA, and multi-agency center. So we can compartmentalize the bodies into categories like that. Then we have the security forces, various security forces and their mandate: Indian Armed Forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, Indian Coast Guard, and Jointness. The 7 Central Armed Police Forces, Border Guarding and Specialist Forces, Paramilitary Forces. The real meaning: Indian Armed Forces and the Coast Guard. Indian Army is headed by Chief of Army Staff. It has 12 lakh active troops, 7 commands: land defense and counterinsurgency, humanitarian assistance, and disaster relief also in case of a disaster. Indian Armed Forces, there are 7 commands. We have various aircrafts like Tejas, Rafale, 700, S-400, air superiority, strategic airlift, and humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. Then we have the Indian Navy. It has 3 commands: Western, Eastern, Southern. Then we have the Indian Coast Guard, constituted by this particular act of 1978 under Ministry of Defense. It handles maritime law enforcement and SAR and anti-smuggling and marine environment as well. Central Armed Police Forces are 7. First is Assam Rifles, then Border Security Force, then Central Industrial Security Force, then CRPF, SSB, NSG, and ITBP. These are the 7 Central Armed Police Forces. They operate under Ministry of Home Affairs. Border guarding forces under the scheme of one border and one force, and BSF caters to Pakistan and Bangladesh, ITBP China, SSB Nepal, and Bhutan, Assam Rifles to Myanmar. So these are their key mandate and approximate length that they have to handle in the border guarding. Internal Security and Specialist Forces, that is CRPF. It is largest CAPF and largest paramilitary force in the world. So you can use this particular fact in the introduction itself. and internal security counter-insurgency in J&K Northeast, anti-Naxal operations, rapid action force for right control, and also it is used in election and VIP duty as well. Then we have the Central Industrial Security Force. It guards the critical infrastructure, airports, nuclear power plants, space installation, ports, metros. In metro, we see the CISF staff has been standing there. Government building, heritage monuments, Delhi Metro. Then we have the NSG, Elite Federal Counter Terror and Counter Hijack Forces, Black Cat Commando, Zero Error Contingency Force, SAG Army for Offensive Operations. It has been raised in 1984 through the NSG Act of 1986. Then we have the paramilitary forces clearing the confusion. We have to clear the confusion. What are paramilitary forces? Strictly, India's paramilitary forces are three forces by officers of the armed forces. The 7 MHA of forces are correctly termed as CAPF. The correct term is CAPFs. Assam Rifles, led by an army officer, Lieutenant General, it is under the dual control of Ministry of Home Affairs, which looks after its administrative part, and Army sees its operational command, and it guards Indo-Myanmar border and northeast counter-insurgency operations. Then comes the Indian Coast Guard under Ministry of Defense, then Special Frontier Force under the Cabinet Secretariat. It covers covert special force raised in 1962, specialized high altitude and special operations led by IG. So, what is the difference between CAPF and paramilitary forces? What is the key distinction? CAPFs are 7 in number under MHA, led by IPS officers or cadre officers, but paramilitary are the 3: Assam Rifles, Coast Guard, and Special Frontier Force that are led by armed forces officers. Assam Rifles appears in the both lists though. So, this is the key difference. Then we have the security agencies. Various security agencies and their mandate. There are intelligence, IB and RAW. Then comes the technical and military intelligence, federal investigation and enforcement agencies. Then we have the cyber and financial intelligence bodies. Then we have the coordination architecture, NSC, MAC and NetGrid. India's intelligence and investigation ecosystem. India's agency fall into four functional families: internal and external intelligence, technical military intelligence, federal investigation, and cyber financial enforcement. So, these are the four broad categories. So, intelligence we cover IB for internal, RAW for external, and we have special state branches. So, this is the key difference between IB and RAW. IB caters to internal intelligence in the country, and RAW considers the external intelligence. Then we have the technical or military intelligence, where we have the National Technical Research Organization, which focus on technological intelligence. Then we have the DIA and the NET grid, National Intelligence Grid. Then we have the investigation, NIA, CBI, and state CIDs, crime investigating departments. Then we have the economic and cyber. There we have ED, Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, National Narcotics Control Bureau, Financial Intelligence Unit, CERT and IN, that caters to cyber intelligence, and I4C. So these are the four broader categories, and apex coordination is through National Security Council. National Security Council Secretariat, Multi-Agency Center under IB. These bind agencies into a single counter-terror and strategic grid. The most important two pillars of our intelligence architecture in our country are the Intelligence Bureau and RAW. What is the difference between the two of them? There is a lot of confusion regarding that. One is, it was set up in 1887, the Intelligence Bureau, among the world's oldest, and it was set up in 1968 after the 1962 and 1965 war. It is under Ministry of Home Affairs. It is under the control of PM or Cabinet Secretariat. It is headed by Secretary. It is headed by Director IB. Its mandate is internal intelligence, counterintelligence, counter-terror, and VIP security inputs. Its mandate is foreign intelligence, counter-proliferation, covert operation, and strategic advice. So this is the primary difference between Intelligence Bureau and Research and Analysis Wing, or RAW. So these are the technical military and cyber agencies: NTRO, DIA, NetGrid, I4C, CERTIN, MAC. So you can cover these particular agencies and their initiatives in little bit detail. You can remember one or two examples of it so that you can quote them in your answers. For example, NTRO, technical intelligence, signal intelligence, imaginary intelligence, cyber and satellite monitoring. So such kind of examples you can at least try to remember so that you can quote in your answers in order to beautify them. Then comes the federal investigation and enforcement agencies. There are a variety of organization with the federal government or with the central government. For example, NIA, CBI, ED, DRI, Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, NCB, Financial Intelligence Unit. This was their year of setup, and this is their parent ministry, and this is their core mandate. So you can cover these bodies briefly from here, so that if in case the question is asked on any particular agency, you are able to write good quality answer, or I would say a better answers from your competitors, which will help you to fetch more marks than your competitors. Otherwise it is a very technical portion. You have to remember a lot of technical things because there are a lot of technicalities. So, the defense decade, how much we are spending on our defense budget, that is in 2026 to 27, we have allotted 7.85 lakh crore rupees. And indigenous production, which we are criticized at times that we are spending less on capital expenditure in order to modify or modernize our armed forces. That is very less, 1.78 lakh crore rupees, around 1.8 lakh crore rupees only. Majority of the portions, or majority of the portion of defense budget goes into salaries, into pensions, and various other things. And our imports are rising. Defense exports, that is 38,000 crore rupees, and 65% of the equipment is now made in India. It is a major milestone for our country. Also, regarding defense exports, you can quote one particular committee, that is Rama Rao Committee. So this particular committee, and also we can write about the US model, because they have two companies, one is Boeing and another is Lockheed Martin. They focus more on research and development. They produce state of art weapons and they export them to the other countries as well. So US model and Rama Rao committee, do write them in your answers in case a question is asked from defense exports. So this is the trajectory of our indigenous defense production. Here we can see, and in also defense exports, you can see, at least you can make a graph on the map in order to show the progress that we have made. You may not remember these two, but at least if you can remember these two, you can make a graph, and it is going to add pictorial representation in your answer, and it is going to beautify your answer. Then we have the forces in action, recent milestone. We have the Operation Sindoor, Agnipath scheme, theaterization, and CDS. Do cover it in detail in case question is asked, because it was related to current affairs only. So do cover it thoroughly. Atmanirbharta in defense. We have this particular data. Do try to remember it. Indigenization list. So try to remember these facts, because in case question is asked, these particular facts are going to add value to your answers. Then we have the anti-Naxal and humanitarian assistance and disaster role. And then we have Mission Sudarshan Chakra announced in 2025, a nationwide protective security shield to be built by 2035, boosting offensive and defensive capabilities. So do mention this particular mission as well. Then we have the challenges and way forward. Challenges, as we have covered in the last slides today as well and yesterday as well: cross-border terrorism, infiltration, drone-borne attacks, left-wing extremism, northeast insurgency, overstretching and coordination gaps, cyber AI and hybrid gray zone warfare, modernization cost and dependence on imports on the foreign countries, and intelligence sharing silos despite multi-agency center net grid. Then we have to write the way forward. We have to write few suggestions in the end in order to make our answer more beautiful. We have to accelerate theaterization and try service jointness, strengthen intelligence fusion, deepen Atmanirbharta, build cyber and space commands, counter drone capabilities. We have to follow a whole of government approach and smart policing and border villages, capacity building and welfare and modernization of CAPS, because we have to do a lot more when it comes to the welfare of our central armed police forces. Primarily, the number of suicides in CRPF that we are seeing are really high, though the actions has been taken to cater to that particular thing as well, but still we need to do something more. Then we have the key takeaway: a layered architecture, military, central forces, intelligence agencies secures India by land, sea, air, and cyber and space. So we have to cover this particular things, and we have to ensure that force, guard and fight, agencies inform and investigate, coordination bodies integrate, and Atmanirbharta empowers our armed forces. So that was it. I hope you got something to learn from this particular session, and you are going to implement these value additions in your answers. Thank you for joining me in this particular session. All the best to you.